Right. So, hello, everyone. My name is Katz. I'm the president of the chamber, and I would like to start the program today. We have the honor of hosting Melinda Katz. She's the district attorney of Queens County. And I would just like to give her a short intro, a little bit about her background. Before DA Katz became the DA of Queens, she's had a long and impressive career in New York City politics, which, if you pay attention to the news, is difficult to do these days, especially. DA Katz was elected to the state assembly in 1994 at the age of 28. And if I remember correctly, that she was the youngest elected assembly member at that time in history. She then had a long tenure as a member of the city council, where she served as the chair of the land use committee, which our real estate professionals will know is a very important position in city politics. And then DA Katz was the Queensborough president for 2 terms before becoming the DA. And I've had the pleasure of knowing DA Katz for many years, and it has been a pleasure. And thank you very much for joining today for this important topic.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I want to thank you for having me. And thank you to the work that the Hellenic-American Chamber of Commerce does. It's so important to have interest groups that focus on the interests of their constituency and in their trades. And I love being a part of this today. Queens is 190 languages in 200 countries, and we love the contributions of our Greek community here in Queens County, but really across the country and across the city. And I want to thank Athos for his leadership. Athos and I have known each other a very long time. We were both much younger at the time. But it is nice to see him again and see him thrive. But also to the whole board of the group. Thank you for having me here today. I have with me today Mary Lowenberg, who's chief of my Major Economic Crimes Bureau. She is a career prosecutor, and she has been here for many years, and she is now the chief. I'm also joined today by Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Connolly, who is the chief of my Frauds Bureau. So if there's any business issues, business questions that maybe people would like answered, I'll try to give a brief summary and an overview, tell you a little bit about what the office is doing. And then I'm very happy also to talk, I think for a moment, if I can, about the city and what we're facing today. And I'm going to start that way. I became the district attorney at this at a time that was a very interesting time in our history. The bail laws had changed on the day that I became the district attorney. The bail laws changed. Since then, they've changed again. Discovery laws changed the day I became the district attorney. Since then, they have again changed again. We have an increase in gun violence. We have a lot of turbulence out there as to how criminal justice should look and in what direction that we should go. I will tell you that I am, for one, believe in a steady hand when it comes to criminal justice. I believe that you can not prosecute for things like social distancing and curfew and even small amounts of pot, which I wasn't, prosecuting for even before the law was changed. But at the same time, prosecute those drivers of crime, those that would come into our borough and sell guns to our children, those that would do embezzlement on companies and destroy their infrastructure. And those folks out there that would be drivers of crime. And while we do that and we prosecute those drivers of crime, let's face it, you're not going to prosecute your way out of the shootings. You're not going to prosecute your way out of crime. You need to make sure the next generation doesn't pick up the exact same guns that we just took off the street. And also that there's, youth services and empowerment and workforce development and all that goes along with making sure the borough is actually safe. Not just that things happen and then we take people off the street, but do that in conjunction with teaching the next generation and making sure that there are services available. And by the way, with COVID, I know that small businesses are really facing a critical juncture in New York. In the city's post-pandemic economic recovery, you'd have to be living in a cave not to realize that the restaurants are changing, the retail's changing, masks on, masks off, how we're tracking people who we've been in contact with, when you have to quarantine, when you don't have to quarantine. And this has a devastating impact on our city's economy. New York City lost more jobs than other cities. Hundreds of small businesses did not survive. Many businesses that did survive, now are taking on a really, really crippling debt just to stay open. And so we understand that deeply. And, even though our city is rebounding, there's just no doubt about it, right? We are rebounding. And look, just a few days ago, my office welcomed back all employees back on site, where we continue to fight for justice for the residents of Queens and our businesses. But pursuant to city law, our people are expected to be back on site. And we all have a responsibility to protect the revitalization of our small businesses, to protect our large businesses who keep us economically viable and safe. And we have to create a safe environment for them to seek the financial services needed to survive in our post-pandemic recovery in this city. And economic crimes is something that I have focused on. And I've always said, whether you're in a jumpsuit or a prison suit or a suit or a regular suit, you have to be accountable for what happens. And one of my main priorities as the DA has been to identify and also to prosecute those who've attempted to take advantage of these horribly difficult times by targeting residents and businesses with scams. As the DA, I created the Major Economic Crimes Bureau and the Frauds Bureau to carry out this mission. And what these bureaus do is they investigate and they prosecute those who would cause the financial harm to our community: identity thieves, credit card scammers, cyber criminals, embezzlers, commercial burglars. These bureaus there's cutting edge technology, these crimes, the way, in a number of different ways. Mail theft and forgery of business checks continues to be a major issue. Thieves, they steal the mail. They take the company checks, they forge them by changing the payee and the amounts. My office is currently prosecuting a ring of gang members who engaged in such a scheme. And actually, one of the individuals that we prosecuted has already been sentenced to prison time. We also have business email compromise scams, and these cyber criminals, they impersonate high-ranking employees from the businesses or other people in the business trust, such as the vendors or a trick company, and they trick the company into transferring funds. And many times those funds are transferred overseas. My major economic crimes prosecutors, they took immediate action to a company that had transferred $800,000 overseas. And with the aid of the FBI, we were able to retrieve almost $700,000. The company got us involved as quickly as they could. And we used all of our resources to try and get the money back as soon as we possibly could. I mean, it's one thing to get the prosecutions, and we appreciate catching those that have done it, but we try to focus on getting restitution and getting the money back for folks, especially when it's in banks. We want to make sure people aren't spending the money. So before they spend it, we try to get it back. We also investigate and prosecute groups of criminals who coordinate efforts to commit major thefts. So my office is currently investigating groups of thieves. And what they do is they use stolen identities and they purchase items. And then, catch this one, they go back to the place that they stole identities and purchased the items with, and they fraudulently then return those items. And then they steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from businesses with locations in Queens, and that's a case that we are now investigating. And then you look at fraudsters that are applying for and receiving, services, right, from the Fed, state, and city. One of them is the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, and the other one is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And they do it on behalf of your companies without the knowledge of the company. So the fraudster will use legitimate company names and addresses but they will direct the funds to bank accounts that they control. Most importantly, it's ones that you don't control. And I think that, that's something that we need to watch out for. And, we get complaints all the time about that. Someone applied for unemployment benefits and that person still works here. Someone applied for unemployment benefits, but, they own the place. So I think it's important for people to keep their eyes and ears open and make sure that they are watching their accounts and keep a real watch for any of that embezzlement type of activity. And in speaking of embezzlement, it's not always just about stealing identities. It's those that have the trust inside of the businesses and they work and they embezzle the money there as well. We're currently prosecuting a woman who is the in-house accountant of a Queens business who stole almost $3 million by placing fake employees on that company's payroll and paying their salaries to herself. So it can also be trusted employees from the inside. So you just have to, I'm not saying that you should be wary of everybody. I'm saying trust but verify. We're seeing an increase in claims of employees stealing from employers really for two reasons, in our opinion, right? The initial slowdown of the pandemic gave business owners more time to review their books and records, right? So it might have been happening before, but now there's a slowdown. The pandemic happens, things aren't as crazy. They look over their records and they see what's been going on. And the second reason is because previously supervised employees are now left unsupervised with access to the company's records because people are out sick or they didn't come back. So it's not really as a result of COVID. It's more like we're finding out as a result of the implications of COVID right now. Look, an important lesson for business owners is to establish a system of checks and balances, right? To regularly verify spending and withdrawals from all your business accounts. And my office is actively prosecuting numerous employees for theft from a lot of unsuspecting businesses. And when we tell the businesses, they're like, no way. But unfortunately, many times it's true. And then there's lastly, just on this topic, is trademark counterfeiting. Due to shortages of supply chain caused by the ongoing pandemic, there's a lot of fraud out there attempting to introduce counterfeit goods in the stream of commerce. My last, the office, I guess it was just a few months ago, uncovered the largest counterfeit 3M N95 mask operation in the country, resulting in the largest ever seizure of counterfeit masks. The investigation revealed that these masks were being advertised as genuine 3M N95 masks. They were sold to hospitals, they were sold to governments, they were sold to military. We contacted everyone we know they were sold to tell them that they were fraud. Our first responders and frontline healthcare workers, they're being subject to untold dangers by criminals looking to profit off of their personal protection equipment. And it's sad, when you think about it, it's just a sad case where we have to call up hospitals and say, stop using the equipment that you fought so hard to get, right? Because you couldn't find it. Hindsight's 2020. If you remember what it was like to find masks and all of the Lysol and Clorox bleach and all that came with it a year ago, think about that. And then we had to make those calls that said, we know you think you have the right masks. It's like holding a sheet of paper over your mouth. It's not helping you. It's not protecting you. And you should have seen it, but just as a side note, you should have seen this place. It was in a warehouse. It was dirty and it was disgusting. And there was an assembly line of how they would take these masks, slap a stamp on it. Then they would take the mask and bundle them up. They'd put a tape on it that said 3M, 3M, 3M. And then they put them in a box with serial numbers in it. You could not tell the difference. So there's a lot going on when it comes to economic crimes. We are here whenever you should feel that someone in your company is, or they think something is not right. We're also here for other things. If you need us, there's a lot of issues that people call us with. They think there's a trafficking ring going on in the community. They fear for someone's daughter. There's domestic violence that we don't think has been reported. The first thing you should always do is call 911 if it's absolutely an emergency. But we are also able to open up many investigations. And in addition to economic crimes, let me just say this. I am doing everything I can to make sure that your businesses and your families can be here in safety. Safety means, like I said in the beginning, and then I'll wrap it up for questions. Safety means that you're able to walk your children to school, that your employees are able to get to their job, that you are able to run your business in a fashion and know that the law is going to back you up when you have an issue that you are questioning. Safety also means making sure that the next generation doesn't make the same mistakes. And working with mentorship programs and youth programs and cure violence groups and doing gun buybacks where we got over 280 guns off the street last year. And all that comes with making sure that the environment in the city of New York is a good one. And amongst all this turmoil that you hear out there, you should know that there's a steady hand that looks at every case, inch by inch, file by file, to make sure that we make judgment calls every day in fairness and in equity. And so I thank you for having me here today. I know I spoke longer than I was supposed to, Athos, I think, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Not at all. No, thank you very much. Never long enough. Absolutely. So I have a few questions on behalf of the board, and then we can open it up to the participants. So it's fascinating, the overview that you did, and the array of crimes that are happening out there and everything you're working on. I know something that's very important that certainly our community is concerned about and everyone is concerned about is violent crime, which you started with, or serious crimes. And you mentioned COVID, and something I think that I'm under the impression, I think a lot of people are, that violent crime has increased after COVID. And I wanted to ask about that. So multi-part question, if you will. How has it increased post-COVID? And what other causes have made it increase? And what is the city doing about the violent crime?
So different crimes have increased and different crimes haven't, right? So shootings have increased, drug overdoses are pretty prevalent. Human trafficking, because people can get lost easily during COVID. There was an increase at some point. And I think there's a lot of reasons, especially to the violent crimes. And I don't think there's one particular reason. I think number one, people are masked. We can't tell them we can't figure out who they are. And so no matter how many video cameras we have and Argus cameras we have, it is very difficult to identify people that are hidden because of safety. And you can walk up to anybody in the street today and either shoot them or rob them. And it's hard to make an ID. So that's, I think, number one. Another cause is mental health illness by people being quarantined and, for want of a better word, cooped up for a year. And mental health services waning during the COVID crisis, right? It wasn't for a few months before a lot of mental health services were able to be on Zoom, and that's assuming that the person who has mental health has Zoom. And it is, closed down a lot of resources that was available to people with mental health crises, and also, limited people who are doing cure violence groups. And although they've been in the street, I got to tell you, every day. So I think mental health illness, I think COVID and not being able to identify, I think the fact that a lot of people are out of work has something to do with it as well. Unemployment rates, and mental health illness leads to like drug overdoses and facilities like that also being closed. So I think there was a lot of reasons for it. We are going after drivers of crime, which I believe is important to lower the gun rates, to lower the shooting rates. It's interesting at this in 1 week, and we did an email to a lot of our people. We have an email list of thousands of people. In 1 week, we vacated a conviction of someone who spent 31 years in jail for a crime where we found new evidence for. And I believed that if the jury had had the new evidence that I found, they would have found him not guilty.
Wow.
He walked into court in handcuffs and a jumpsuit, and he walked out in a men's suit, a free man. I vacated the conviction. He had about 15 more years to go, and I vacated his indictment. That same week, I indicted, charged, and picked up 28 gang members, alleged gang members, from Queensbridge, because they were having these huge battles about turf. And people were getting shot in the street, and innocent bystanders, because people were missing their targets and shooting other people. So what are we doing about it? I try to bring the steady hand and the balance, at least to Queens County. And I think there's a lot of DAs throughout the state trying to do the same thing. And so, you know, and we work with the mayor's office against gun violence and all of the other agencies.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have is regarding the police. It's been a very complicated time with the police, especially during the pandemic, with protests and the defund the police movement. And the question is, how do you work with the police? Has it been more challenging to do so? And how does a DA's office, yours and generally, how do they foster a good relationship with the police?
You know, it's interesting, right? Because like all relationships that rely on each other, it has to be based somewhat on trust, right? But I always say trust but verify. So, and I don't know if Mr. Connolly or Ms. Lowenberg have any other, you know, comments about working with the police department, but I can only say this. You know, we do a lot of our investigations with the police squads. They make the online arrest, they make the arrest. We have to make sure that we take a proper affidavit on the arrests on a daily basis, which is where a lot of the community like issues come up, right? So my intake bureau looks over every affidavit with a critical eye, as they should, no matter who the affidavit is that we are filing the complaint, no matter who the person, the affiant is on the affidavit, no matter who files the complaint. You should look at it always with a critical eye, because we're the ones that are filing the formal charges. I can't just take everyone's word for it, right? You can't write up a complaint that says this guy did it, and there's no evidence that says that they're guilty of it, or that at least you can meet the standards that the legislation requires, or that the law requires. So we work with the police every day. I also hold them accountable. You know, I was the first one to indict an officer under the new chokehold bill that Andrew Cuomo signed. About a week after he signed it, you know, a police officer was videotaped, which I thought was a chokehold under the law. We actually got a new no true bill on that indictment. I tried to indict it. We got a no true bill on that, which means that he was not, in fact, indicted. But I felt that you hold police accountable, you gain the trust in the community. Anybody have anything to add or not? No?
Okay, thanks. Okay, so my next question is, I'd like to steer clear of politics as much as possible, but New Yorkers have had the same mayor for a long time now, and that's about to change, and that's on people's minds. And I wanted to ask, do you expect any changes from the incoming administration, whether that's regarding policy or initiatives? Will anything change that you are based on the change in administration?
Yes. I mean, you know, I can't talk for Eric Adams. I can only say, or whoever the next mayor is, I can only say that every elected official brings with them their own history, their own expertise, their own experience, their own trusted relationships, and their own vision of how the world should work. And it's interesting to me, you know, when you run for office, people always say, well, you know, what about this swath of things, right? As if there's one opinion for everything. I think that every elected brings with them their own experiences. I look forward to seeing what the next mayor does. I think that there are a lot of issues, like Rikers, like the school system, like small businesses and small business services, especially in the loan department and all of those issues that come with it. The great thing about being the district attorney is, hopefully we take a step back from who the electeds are as opposed to just what our job is. But I do think that the new mayor has a lot of issues that he will have to, there's only two candidates, I can say he will have to really deal with, and relatively soon.
Right, thank you. And the last question is, and you touched on this on some of your earlier comments, but what can ordinary citizens and business owners do day to day to stop or help prevent crime? And you mentioned some business related things, but people think about these things all the time, just day to day on the street, whether they see a dangerous situation. I know I've had friends that have been in uncomfortable physical situations on the street, more so or seemingly more so than they have been in the past. And these things cause stress. And I just was wondering if you have any advice, generally advice for them.
Sure. Well, number one, as a business owner, and then I'll talk about life, right? Just so you know, as a business owner, we've actually created individual responses to certain neighborhood issues, right? So we had retail stores in Jamaica, Queens. There was a lot of, kids would come, not kids, but, young adults would come in, they were dealing in front of the store, they'd come into the store, they'd shoplift, whatever it is, and they were having trouble running their retail stores. We actually created a system where we created a warning document. We worked with the police department together. We went out, we announced it together. We created a document pursuant to that particular neighborhood, and we do that if we can. And it was a warning. Next time you come here, we're going to issue you're not going to be allowed back. We are then going to get the police. So it's a warning. And then the next time they come, they've had warnings. And we created a system in which to respond to that. So I think the answer on the business level is we're usually able to find some answers, the things that you may not think we can. As far as everyday like life goes, so you witness a crime, you're a victim of a crime. Number one, we never ask about citizenship. We never ask about status, your documentation status, nothing like that. Those questions will never come from my office. If you are a witness, if you are a victim, it never comes into play. So number one, I would love it if your employees or your business partners, whoever your families know that they can always report a crime. Number two, whether it's a witness or a victim. Number two, if they see something, it is a good idea to videotape as long as you can do it without being in danger. So especially things like hate crimes and sexual abuse that you might see on the street or whatever it is. But with hate crimes, it's particularly important. You see something happen, you can videotape it. Am I aging myself? Is that what I'm doing? Videotaping it, record it. Use your phone.
Yeah, no, that's taping
Use your phone. I don't think it's videotape anymore, but it's catching the images and making sure that you give that to someone like the police department or my office or whichever borough you're in, the DA's office. That's number two. Number three, reporting something as fast as you can is very helpful because it allows us to get out, it allows the police to get out there and get witnesses and get, anybody who might have anything to do with seeing the crime and might be able to be verifiers, validators, and all that comes with that. It also allows us to look at the Argus cameras quicker and easier if we know approximately, where the crime was, and it happens pretty quickly. So those are the types of things that you can do. You're more powerful than you think. And that's really, I think, the message I want to express. People look at things and they say, oh, what can I do? Like, what am I going to do about it? You can do a lot about things. But I only suggest that if you can, and you do, that you do it in safety.
Well, thank you very much, DA Katz. I really appreciate you coming. Before I open it to questions, I'd just like to say, for me, as a defense attorney, the day that I get to question the DA is a highlight. So thank you for that. And
at this, if you don't mind, Mr. Connolly or Ms. Lowenberg, counselors, do you have anything that you think I should have added that I didn't?
yeah, of course.
Well done.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks again, DA. And I'd like to open it up now to questions from our participants. So please, if you have something, you can pass it through Alexandra, who's administering it, or just raise your hand and we will unmute you.
And
That's okay.
While you're doing that, if Mr. Connolly and Ms. Lowenberg can put their email addresses and phone numbers in the chat in case people have specific issues in their businesses that they'd like to ask about, that would be very helpful.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
So are there any questions out there?
My email is katz@queensda.org. This is when my staff starts screaming at me. Katz@queensda.org. It goes right to my phone, goes to a bunch of other people just so I don't miss it, but business questions can always ask.
Okay. Well, if nobody asks any soon, it
I
sounds like you're going to get off easy.
I had a question.
Yes, please.
I was, thank you for taking the question. I was wondering where you stood on the proposal to close Rikers Island and to build a separate jail facility in Kew Gardens. Being a Queens resident my entire life, I have yet to meet another Queens resident that thinks this is a good idea, or that, and you know, wants a jail. Basically, would be 2 blocks from my daughter's high school. So I'm curious as to where you would come out on that.
So I was the chair of the land use committee when it came through, not true, I'm sorry. I was the borough president when it came through Queens. And I actually voted against the current proposal. And in that proposal, it was a massive proposal. It was like, I forgot how many at the time, it was like 2,000 people. And at the time we were trying to lower Rikers population to about 3,500. And I couldn't see any world in which we needed a few thousand beds here in Queens County. Having said that, we have to do something about Rikers. And I think the mayor is trying to do it now. We are sending people upstate faster if we can, instead of keeping them in Rikers. We are making sure that the sentencing is happening as quick as possible so that they don't have to wait at Rikers. We are reviewing our bail status. But at the end of the day, I thought that the proposal for Queens was too big. I didn't think the community was involved enough. Now, I don't know. I got to be honest with you, Mr. Metzis. Mr. Metzis?
Yeah.
I don't know the new mayor's view on this. You know, and I'm not sure if he's made any public statements on it. It could go either direction once he gets in, because it hasn't started. So I think that's important to know. And just as a little bit of a side note, and I know that it's a very sort of touchy issue, but I think it is important for people to understand New York City is the only counties in the entire state of New York that don't have county jails. And I just want to put that in perspective, right? And again, I voted against it at the land use when I was borough president. But we are the only county. There are 62 counties in New York State. There are only 5 that don't have county jails: New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, and Queens. So, you know, I just think that that's a little perspective that many people don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you, DA.
Thank you for the question. Good luck to your daughter in high school. What high school?
Archbishop Malloy.
Oh, Malloy. You know, back in my day, I was at Hillcrest. We took the subway with, at that point, it was Malloy boys, it was guys. That's how old I am. But that's a great school. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the DA?
Okay.
Okay,
I'm always here. I'm always here. Mr. Connolly's always here. Ms. Lowenberg's always here. I thank you for the work that your organization does in making sure that there's some sort of infrastructure for businesses, especially in the community. And I thank you for having me at this. Anything else you'd like from me?
thank you very much. No, thanks very much for making yourself available and just answering our questions and just being here. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
everyone.
Take care.
Bye. Bye, Anthony.